right, thank you, everyone. Please be seated. State may call its next witness.
State calls Master Trooper Micheal Smith.
Come on up, Trooper Smith. When you get to the witness stand, which is to my right, up one riser, if you would please remain standing, raise your right hand, and my clerk, Teresa, will swear you in.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a seat. Madam Clerk, I'm giving you previously received 54. Right, sir, the first thing I will have you do is to state your first and last names for the record and spell each.
First name is Micheal, M-I-C-H-A-E-L. Last name is Smith, S-M-I-T-H.
Thank you. Go ahead, your witness.
Thank you. How are you employed?
With the Wisconsin State Patrol.
What's your job title?
I am a reconstructionist with the Technical Reconstruction Unit.
How long have you had that position?
I joined the TRU when it was originally formed in 2008. I've been doing full-time recon since 2002. We had a unit formed based on the need for a reconstructionist that did this type of crash investigation all the time. That's all we do. A normal trooper has traffic enforcement duties. We just have strictly crash recon duties. That's all we do.
How long have you worked for State Patrol?
I was hired in 2000.
Can you describe for us your educational background?
Yes, I have a 2-year associate's degree in criminal justice, and then multiple training in the crash reconstruction field through the State Patrol.
So I'd like to get into that a little bit. Can you tell us what kind of training was required to become a reconstructionist for the State Patrol?
Yes, I've had over about 2,000 hours of training. That training has been done at our State Patrol Academy. We bring in schools like Northwestern, Texas A&M, IPTM, which stands for the Institute of Police Technology and Management. They come in, they're college-level courses. They teach us, obviously, over a series of weeks. We also have specialty instructors come in for specialty fields in accident reconstruction, which can be vehicle versus pedestrian, vehicle versus motorcycle, CMB crashes, lighting studies, and a bunch of other ones.
How many accident or crash scene reconstruction analyses have you completed as a reconstructionist with the State Patrol?
Well, since about probably 2004, I would say till now, I average probably over 100 a year that I respond to. And these are serious crashes. They're not just, somebody driving into a mailbox. This is a criminal or possibly injury case involving criminal charges that we respond to. But probably on average over 100 a year for the last, since 2004.
Did you conduct a crash reconstruction analysis in downtown Waukesha from an event that took place on November 21st, 2021?
I did.
When did you begin your work on that analysis?
I worked with detectives from the City of Waukesha Police Department. On January 30th of this year, we actually went out to the scene to conduct a time distance analysis.
Where did you go at the scene?
We went to the Curry Insurance Company, which was the cameras that we decided to use after viewing all the videos. That was the best, as far as what I'm concerned, to use in a time distance analysis. It was the clearest. It provided certain things that made it necessary for me to do an accurate time distance analysis.
What are some of those certain things you referenced?
What we look for and what we've been trained to do is, first of all, we look for a stationary camera, one that doesn't move. So when we are viewing the video of the incident and we are, again, recording new video with a time distance analysis, that camera is in the same exact spot. That's the first thing we do. Secondly, we want to have at least 2 fixed reference points to actually see where a vehicle in this case is entering the first reference point and where it hits the second reference point. So those need to be really clear for us to get an accurate distance. And from that point, then we want to actually time or make sure the timing on the video software is accurate. And that's simply a stopwatch that we use to verify that that video is timing correctly, not too fast, not too slow. So once we have all that done and we determine those 2 points, we will bring a vehicle in, and in this case an exemplar vehicle that matched the description, I think your make and model of the vehicle that was in the parade. We actually will have someone, me in this case, inside watching the video on the screen, seeing when that exemplar vehicle comes into the screen. When it comes into the screen where the vehicle did at the time, we have somebody mark that location out on the roadway. We then do that for a second point further down. In this case, we had 2 points. Once we have those 2 points established, then we're bringing our survey equipment out, which is a Trimble unit that you've all seen them out on the roadways and then, people's homes where they're surveying. That's what we use. Very accurate instrument. Just to give you an idea of accuracy, at about 300 feet, it's plus or minus an eighth of an inch off. So very, very accurate unit, which we use all the time for crash reconstruction. So once we have that distance, we verified the timing. It's a pretty simple calculation that we do to determine a vehicle's average speed through that particular distance that we have. And just keep in mind it's an average speed, so it could be moving faster or slower during certain portions of the distance, but it's just basically taking that average speed through that distance that we measured.
When you use that Trimble machine to conduct your measurements, did you use those measurements to later produce a 2-scale scene diagram?
I did.
Okay, I'd like to project for the witness-only exhibit number 56, please.
56?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Go ahead, show the witness.
Do you recognize the diagram on the screen in front of you?
I do.
What is it?
That is the scale diagram that I created as a result of the Trimble measurements that I took out at the scene.
I move exhibit 56 into evidence and request permission to publish.
Objection. I can't see it on my screen.
He's right.
Oh, I don't know why. We'll need to check the cabling. I can see it on mine.
What exhibit was that?
56.
I don't know. We can. Can you get Zach down here, please? Check the. Oh. Let me know when it's on the screen in front of you, sir.
I see it.
All right. Continue then. Oh, and Exhibit 56. Well, first of all, let him review it. It's been offered by the state. You've now had an opportunity to review it, sir. All right, Exhibit 56 is received. Permission to publish is granted. Go ahead.
Okay, could you please walk us through what we're looking at here?
Yes, again, so this would be a diagram, two-dimensional orthogonal, so basically looking from the top down at the area that I did measure at the time we did the speed analysis. Obviously, it depicts a vehicle at a starting point and a vehicle at an end point. The vehicle at point A represents where that vehicle came into that east camera that was located at the Curry Insurance Company. And as soon as basically that vehicle, you're able to view it inside inside the insurance company with the representative was there, I basically told that vehicle to stop. We marked that location on the roadway, and then we continued down to the secondary point, which I determined was the crosswalk. And we marked at that point once the exemplar vehicle reached that. And that's how we got that distance of 141 feet, roughly 3 inches.
Okay. And what do you do with that distance once you have that measurement?
So once we have that measurement, that's one part of the equation that we need. The equation that we need, just really explain it briefly, comes from Newton's laws of motion. Force equals mass times acceleration. It's part of Newton's second law. The formula that we use is velocity equals distance divided by time, and then we convert that velocity to speed. So we need two inputs in order to calculate the average speed of that vehicle over that distance. The first, obviously, is distance. The second is time. Now, how we get the time is we take the actual video from the incident, and we have a stopwatch, and we time it when it reaches those fixed points. And we do about 20 iterations, then we average those 20 iterations out to get a time, and that's the second part of the equation that we need in order to get that velocity or speed. Once we have that time, In this case, it was 2.7 seconds. We round up and increase that time to the nearest whole number, which was 3.
Why do you round up? I'm sorry to interrupt you there.
That's fine. We round up always to give the benefit to the vehicle, because obviously the longer it takes to travel that distance, the slower the speed will be. So we always round up to the next number. If it was 2 seconds, we'd round up to 2.5. So it's about every half-second interval that we round up to. So now that we have the distance of 142 feet roughly and the time of 3 seconds, not 2.7, we came up with the speed of the vehicle, or average speed of the vehicle during that segment, of 32 miles an hour.
32 miles an hour as an average speed from point A to point B as they're depicted on this diagram?
Correct.
Witness.
Sustained is to the form of the question. Please rephrase. The jury will disregard the last answer.
Could you please explain for us, again, summarizing what average speed you calculated and over what distance?
Yes. So the average speed, very simple. We marked point A, we marked point B, we had that distance, we had that time. The vehicle speed between point A, or the average vehicle speed, let me reiterate, was 32 miles an hour between point A and point B.
You mentioned an exemplar vehicle earlier. Can you maybe explain for us again the purpose of using an exemplar vehicle in your analysis?
Well, when I worked with the detectives from the City of Waukesha PD, we wanted to find an exemplar vehicle just due to the type of case this was. They were able to easily locate one that was very convenient to use, matching the description, I believe the year, make, and model of the car that was in the actual parade. So we decided to use that. Realistically, you can use any type of vehicle because you're just basically looking for that object coming into that frame of reference. But just for court purposes, I think it's a little bit easier to, show the jury that, hey, we used a vehicle that was similar or the same.
And in terms of this case, you used a 2010 red Ford Escape?
Correct.
Okay. Do you happen to know the curb weight of that vehicle?
Yeah.
Overruled. You may answer.
So explaining what curb weight is really quick, that's the weight of the vehicle as it comes off the assembly line. So it doesn't include fuel, it doesn't include any personal items, it's just right off the assembly line. This particular 4x2 vehicle was 3,368 pounds, curb weight.
Okay. And to clarify, does curb weight have anything to do with your average speed analysis?
It does not.
Okay. When you get to the end result of your speed analysis, and you have that number, the average speed over that distance, does somebody check your work?
Yes, absolutely. Part of our protocol in the TRU is we have to have all of our reports peer reviewed. Has to be done. Every single one goes out to a former member of the TRU who is now a consultant for us. He peer reviews it, makes sure that everything is correct.
Okay, I want to wrap up by just asking you some clarifying questions about the nature of what an average speed means. Can you say definitively that at any point between point A and point B, the vehicle was traveling faster than 32 miles an hour?
Objection, hearsay.
Overruled. You may answer.
So average speed is calculated, as we talked about, through that distance. The vehicle can either be going faster than 32 or slower than 32 over that distance. But it's an average. Is it possible the vehicle maintained a constant speed of 32? Yes. But it's more plausible that you have higher and lower speeds during that segment.
Okay. That's all I have for this witness. Thank you.
Thank you. Cross.
Yes. This is kind of distraction still being on there. From your testimony, it seems like you've been doing crash reconstructions from quite some time. Is that fair to say?
Yes, sir.
Around 2004, I believe you said?
I was in the program from about 2002, but really started getting into full recons about 2004. You need a little bit of training first before you can actually go out and be on your own.
You stated that you worked with detectives in the process. Do you recall who that was?
Yeah, that was Detective Casey.
on getting the calculation of the speed, did you work with anyone on that side of your investigation?
No.
So it's pretty much just you and the detectives.
The detective did not assist me with the speed calculation. He just assisted me with obtaining the videos and also assisted me, excuse me, out at the scene where we did the testing.
I think the exhibit showed the building that had the camera. Do you recall which streets that were along the parade route?
Yeah, that was in front of Curia Insurance on Main Street.
And the point A and point B, did those start from a cross street, or was it just the main?
The insurance company has cameras outside by the sidewalk. There's two of them. There's one towards the east and one towards the west, right at the front of the building.
You made reference to the distance traveled in feet.
Correct.
I think it was 141.
Correct. 141 feet 2 inches, a little bit over that.
And you made a reference to the average speed. Any reason why the average speed wasn't depicted in the exhibit?
That's just a calculation that we do that's included in the report. I don't normally do that in the diagram.
So it would be fair to say that you created the diagram?
I did create the diagram, yes.
You said normally you don't put the speed calculation in the diagram. Would it be any reason for that?
It's in the report. It's not necessary to put it in the diagram.
Have you ever done that before?
Could you rephrase the question?
Have you ever not included the speed analysis in any crash reconstructions that you've done before this one?
Are you referring to the diagram or are you referring to the report?
Referring to the diagrams.
No, I don't. I do not put speed calculation results in diagrams.
On any of them?
On any of them.
Did you create any diagram with the speed calculations present on it?
No, I don't. The diagram that I created is the one that was up on the screen.
And then from there, you put the speed calculations just in the report.
Yeah, I normally just put them in the report, yes. I don't have any recollection of putting one in the diagram.
Would it be fair to say that it may be a little bit difficult to locate what you analyze for speed if it's not in the diagram?
No.
So if you wanted to know the calculation of the speed, you would have to read the report.
Correct.
Would it be fair to say that it might be easier to find if it was included in the diagram?
My diagram is included with my report, and that's all one unit, so it is in the report.
Can you explain what the S6 is?
Yes, the S6 is the name of the Trimble robotic total station that we use to actually measure things at crash scenes.
So that's like a certain technology or something. Would that be fair to say?
It's a piece of surveying equipment that if you've been on the road, you've seen them where they're measuring the roadways, or if somebody's building a home. Same type of equipment, we just use it for crash reconstruction.
And what is a prism? Is that in direct relation to the electronic distance measuring system?
Correct. The total station is one part of the equipment that we use. The prism is the other. The total station communicates with the prism through an electronic digital measuring system, which is a laser. The two pieces are needed, in this case, to collect the measurements that I collected. Not a necessary component to using the equipment, but we normally do use the prism when taking measurements.
And that prism's pretty accurate, you would say.
Well, the unit is accurate.
What about the prism?
Yeah, it's all accurate. The unit itself is very accurate. At 300 feet, it's about 1/8 of an inch either way, plus or minus.
And is the CAD the diagram that you created?
Could you rephrase the question, please?
Is the CAD is that software related to the diagram that you created?
It is.
In what way?
The computer-aided design software program that we use is a tool that when we transfer the measurements from the Trimble total station, we transfer that into the computer-aided design program, and that's how we create our diagram.
Can you explain what the 2.4 gigahertz radio technology is?
That's just software that's built into the total station, the Trimble unit, as part of its communication.
And is that communication radio?
Yeah, there's a radio inside the unit, correct?
You made reference to something called Newton's law. Can you explain a little bit further what that is?
Newton's laws of motion are what we use as a big step in our reconstruction field. A lot of formulas are derived from Newton's laws, including the formula that we use to calculate the vehicle's average speed. Sir Isaac Newton obviously invented the laws of motion. We all learned that in high school, and that's part of the process that came to the formula that I use to calculate the average speed.
I always thought of Newton as gravity, so that was a bit of new information. You made reference to part of the crash reconstruction was finding a similar vehicle. Would that be fair to say?
Yes.
And you were able to find a similar vehicle pretty easily, you would say?
That would have been the City of Waukesha Police Department which found the vehicle.
And you made reference to it being in the parade as well? Or part of the parade as well?
The exemplar vehicle?
Yes, the vehicle that was similar.
The exemplar vehicle was not in the parade.
I may have misinterpreted what you were saying. And you said it was found by the Waukesha Police Department.
Yes, sir.
Do you recall if that part of your investigation and the creating of the graph and all that technology that goes with that, was that part of the same day, or were they done on at different times?
I'm sorry, are you referencing the diagram, the creation of the diagram?
Right.
No, that was
Because
not.
it seems like a lot of technology went into getting the diagram created and, you know, different variations of that. And then also using a similar vehicle to, I guess, simulate would that be fair to say, simulate the incident?
We used the exemplar vehicle for our testing.
Was that done all the same day, or was it done?
Sorry, could you rephrase the question again? I'm not understanding what you're asking.
Was the creation of the diagram and the simulation of the vehicle done on the same day?
No, it was not.
So it'd be fair to say it was a process involved in getting all the information.
Correct.
And you stated that was done around January 30th, around that time?
The testing was done on January 30th.
And what about the simulation from the similar vehicle?
I'm sorry, could you rephrase the question?
Do you recall what date the simulation was performed?
Are you asking when I completed my analysis?
Specifically the part of the similar vehicle being used.
That was January 30th. We did the testing out on Main Street in front of Curry Insurance.
So what part of the process was done at a later date?
The diagram, the calculations, the time distance analysis.
Do you recall the date of the second part of the investigation?
Are you referring to when I completed my reports?
Yes.
No, I don't know what day that was.
Was it sometime after the January 30th date?
Correct.
Would you say there was a delay in finishing it, or did something cause you to kind of... Let me rephrase that. Was there anything that may have delayed you finishing the investigation quickly?
Can you rephrase? What do you mean by quickly?
It seems like there was two parts of it: getting the simulation done and then the actual diagram and things of that. Any reason why that couldn't be done closer together?
Well, first of all, it's not a simulation because a simulation is different than what we did. This was just some testing we did out at the scene. Secondly, as I mentioned earlier, I respond to hundreds of crashes. It depends on what I'm working on at the time. Once our reports are completed, they need to be peer reviewed. All that process takes time. So there's nothing that delayed my report. If you want to use me going to another crash, that possibly could have delayed it, but no delays that would affect the outcome of the report or the accuracy of the report.
No, I wasn't going to that part of it. I was just kind of curious to what may have spaced out the dates. That's what I was really getting at.
We do a lot of reports every year, and obviously we're not just doing one report a year. So every report is different. Every report requires different types of analysis. So there's really no set time on when we can finish a report compared to when we started. It just depends on what else is going on outside of our time in the office.
No further questions.
Any redirect?
No, thank you, Your Honor.
All right, thank you, sir. You may step down. You may. Statement called. Next witness.
It's going to call Dr. A.B. Shiel.
All right, good afternoon, Dr. Shiel. If you would please make your way to the witness stand, which is to my right, up one riser. When you get there, please remain standing. Raise your right hand, and my clerk, Teresa, who's on my left, will swear you in.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. Please be seated. First thing I will ask you to do is to state your first and last names for the record and spell each, please.
Amy Shiel, AMYSHEIL.
Thank you. Go ahead, your witness.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Dr. Shiel. How are you currently employed?
I'm an associate medical examiner at the Waukesha County Medical Examiner's Office.
How long have you been with the medical examiner's office?
About 7.5 years.
What are your duties at the medical examiner's office?
My primary function is to determine cause and manner of death. And in order to do that, I often perform autopsies or external examinations, send out laboratory tests, interpret the results of those tests, compile all this information into a report, and then certify a death certificate.
And is that report, what is that report called?
An autopsy protocol or autopsy report.
Can you briefly describe to the jury the schooling and training you went through to become an associate medical examiner?
Yes, I earned my Doctor of Medicine degree from Creighton University in Nebraska in 2003. And then I completed a pathology residency in South Carolina. That is anatomic and clinical pathology. And then I did a 1-year forensic pathology fellowship, which concerns how disease and injury cause death. Then I practiced for about a year as a forensic pathologist in South Carolina. And then I did an additional year of training in pediatric pathology, which is the study of diseases and conditions in infants and children. I worked in pediatric pathology in an academic setting for about 5 years before coming to Waukesha County.
I'm going to direct your attention to approximately November 22nd of 2021. Did you perform an external examination of an individual identified as Leanna Owen?
Yes.
I did give you 3 exhibits when you walked into court, is that correct?
Yes.
I'm going to direct your attention to exhibit number 62. Do you see that in front of you?
Yes.
Is that the autopsy protocol for Leanna Owen?
Yes.
And can you just state for the record how many pages that autopsy protocol consists of?
It's not on the screen.
And it's not going to be on the screen.
Under previously provided to Mr. Brooks.
Yes.
Do you have any additional copies today? Any chance?
I do not. We can make some.
You don't have that in your materials, sir? Do you have the autopsy protocol in your materials?
No.
You can provide that to Madam Clerk and we can make copies as well.
Was it intended for me to have or not to have? Just so I'm clear.
I can't answer that.
These autopsy protocols were previously provided to the defense.
All right, we'll still make copies. Go ahead, yeah.
I
I'm
said,
going to run next door and copy them, and you can continue since we're on the first exhibit. Do you have exhibit 62, sir?
It would be the autopsy protocol for Leanna Owen.
I accept for value in return for value these documents shown.
The record should reflect that the defendant has a copy of exhibit 62. Please continue, Attorney Glazer.
Ma'am, what did you do in this case in terms of examinations of Ms. Owen?
On November
Generally speaking, I'm sorry.
On November 22nd, I performed her external examination, which involves documentation of all her clothing and jewelry, her identifying features such as stature, body weight, hair color, eye color, any scars, tattoos, and then we proceed with documentation of injuries.
And did you also create a summary of the injuries that you located on Ms. Owen?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to show for you on the screen in front of you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 163. If you can tell me when you can see that on the screen in front of you. And I did provide Mr. Brooks a copy of both the autopsy protocol as well as the diagram that's going to show on the screen.
Consent to being called that name, Your Honor, for the record.
Ma'am, do you see? Is it showing up in front of your screen? And Exhibit 163, is that the diagram that you prepared to summarize your findings in the autopsy protocol for Leanna Owen?
Yes.
And does it accurately depict the injuries that are notated or described in the autopsy protocol?
Yes.
I would ask the court to accept Exhibit 62 and 163 into evidence.
Objection.
the objection to both. Each objection is noted. They're overruled. Exhibits 62 and 163 are both received. Permission to publish are, I believe only 163 is what you asked me for, is granted.
Yeah, there was only one asked for.
Permission to publish 163. That's what I said.
Thank you. Ma'am, can you briefly describe what this document, Exhibit 163, portrays?
This diagram depicts Leanna Owen's injuries. The red represents open wounds, lacerations, or abrasions, which are scrapes to the skin. Blue is for bruising or contusions. Black is internal injuries or skeletal fractures.
And in performing the autopsy procedure on Miss Owen, what was the cause of her death?
Multiple blunt force traumatic injuries.
Specifically for the injuries that she sustained, can you describe the fatal injuries for the jury?
Objection, leading witness.
Overruled. She may answer.
Leanna Owen had injuries to her head, spine, torso, and viscera, or her internal organs. The combination of all these injuries led to her death, but she did sustain isolated injuries to her upper cervical spine, or her neck spine, and aortic lacerations. The aorta is the largest artery in the body. That would have been fatal within seconds to a couple of minutes.
And would all those injuries be consistent with being struck by a moving SUV weighing approximately 3,300 pounds?
Objection, hearsay.
Overruled. You may answer.
Yes.
Thank you. I'm next going to direct your attention to, did you perform an autopsy on an individual identified as Virginia Sorensen?
Yes.
And do you have her autopsy protocol in front of you, Exhibit 63?
Yes.
And do you have a diagram detailing Miss Sorensen's injuries on in Exhibit 164? Oh,
I don't have the diagram.
you do not have a diagram.
And once again, this is 164.
That is correct.
All right, thank you.
Do you see it in front of you?
Yes.
Does the documentation in Exhibit 164, is that a summary of your findings from the autopsy protocol for Ms. Sorensen?
Yes.
I would ask the court to admit Exhibits 164 and 63 and publish 164.
Objection.
Obviously, 164 is on the screen. Has Exhibit 63, the copy, been provided to Mr. Brooks?
Correct. The autopsy protocol for Virginia Sorensen as well as the diagram contained in 164 have both been provided to Mr. Brooks.
Objection, I don't consent to that name, nor do I agree to it.
Oh. All right. Exhibits 63 and 164 are both received. Permission to publish 164 is granted.
Thank you. Let me know when you see it in the screen in front of you.
Yes.
Okay. Again, ma'am, the injuries that are detailed in Exhibit 164 that's showing on the screen, was that exhibit created as a result of your findings in the autopsy protocol for Ms. Sorensen?
Yes.
And can you describe for the jury what injuries you discovered? Well, first of all, strike that. Did you perform an external and an internal examination of Ms. Sorensen?
Objection, reading the witness.
Overruled. She may answer.
Yes.
When did you perform those?
November 22nd, 2021.
And during the autopsy, what injuries did you discover on Ms. Sorensen?
Virginia Sorensen had blunt trauma to her head, neck, torso, and right leg.
Were you able to determine a cause of death for Ms. Sorensen?
Yes, multiple blunt force traumatic injuries.
And can you describe for the jury which injuries were fatal injuries?
Virginia
Objection, being the
Sorensen.
witness.
Overruled.
Virginia Sorensen also had a high cervical spine injury with laceration of her brainstem. She also had lacerations to her heart, either of which would have been fatal.
And is that consistent with being struck by a moving SUV weighing approximately 3,300 pounds?
Objection, hearsay.
Overruled.
Yes.
Finally, Dr. Shiel, did you perform an autopsy on Jackson Sparks?
Yes.
And did you create an autopsy protocol after your examinations of Jackson Sparks?
Yes.
And did you perform, or did you create a diagram which displayed the injuries on Jackson Sparks?
Yes.
Do you have in front of you Exhibit 64, which is an autopsy protocol for Jackson Sparks?
Yes.
And I'm going to display what's been marked as State's Exhibit 165 on the screen in front of you.
Objection, I'm confused. The 64 or?
They reference both.
Oh, okay.
64 is the protocol, 165 is the diagram.
Okay, I was a little confused.
And for the record, the state did provide Mr. Brooks with a autopsy protocol for Jackson Sparks as well as a copy of Exhibit 165, which is the diagram. Ma'am?
Objection, I do not consent to that name, nor do I know that individual, for the record.
Please continue.
Thank you. Ma'am, does Exhibit 165, the diagram in front of you, accurately show the findings that you made during the autopsy of Jackson Sparks?
Yes.
Okay. I would ask the court to admit State's Exhibit 64 as well as State's Exhibit 165 into
Objection.
evidence and publish Exhibit 165.
Objection.
Overruled. Exhibit 64 is received. Exhibit 165 is received. Permission to publish is granted.
Thank you. And Exhibit 165 is the diagram that you took, which displays the findings that you made in your autopsy protocol.
Yes.
Can you describe for the jury the injuries that you observed? Strike that. When did you do your external and internal examination of Jackson?
November 27, 2021.
Why was that later than the others?
Jackson went to the hospital. He was pronounced brain dead on November 23rd.
And again, is there any reason why it would take till the 27th to perform the autopsy?
Objection.
He was
Hold on.
Oh, sorry.
Overruled. You may answer.
Jackson was in the hospital. He became an organ donor, which often requires a couple of extra days.
Can you describe for the jury his injuries?
Jackson had bruising around both of his eyes. He had a large bruise to the left side of his forehead. He had undergone a craniectomy where the neurosurgeon removes a portion of skull to relieve pressure on the brain from brain swelling. That's the large oval depicted on the left side of the skull in the diagram. He had trauma to his brain. He had bleeding around his brain inside his skull. He had multiple bruises to his brain. He also had a separation of his skull from his cervical spine. And he had 2 rib fractures on the right side.
What was his cause of death?
Complications of craniocerebral injuries due to blunt force trauma to head.
And what injuries of those were fatal?
his head injuries.
Would that be consistent with it being struck by a moving SUV weighing approximately 3,300 pounds?
Yes.
Objection, hearsay.
Overruled her answer, Ms. Hill.
Nothing further, Your Honor. Thank you.
Cross-exam.
1 second.
You can take the exhibit now. Mr. Brooks? Your cross, please. Do you have any questions for this witness?
Just 1 second. I apologize to the court for taking so long. Do you know why the decision was made to why the decision was made for Jackson to become an organ donor?
Objection is irrelevant.
Sustained.
Did you end up doing any more autopsies besides those 3?
As it relates to this case or some other case, sir?
This case. To this case.
Did you hear the question?
Could he please repeat it?
Please repeat your question.
As far as this case, those 23 autopsies that you did?
Yes, Jackson Sparks, Virginia Sorensen, and Leanna Owens.
Can you recall when when they were brought to the hospital?
Virginia Sorensen and Leanna Owens were pronounced at the scene. Jackson Sparks was transported to the hospital.
I'm assuming that's Waukesha Memorial.
He was transferred to Children's Hospital of Wisconsin.
Upon first tending to the victims, were you in the knowledge of what happened?
Yes.
And that knowledge was given to you immediately?
Could you please repeat?
That knowledge was given to you immediately when you were called to tend to him?
Yes.
Were you called to attend to any other victims of the incident? Or just the three?
Jackson Sparks, Virginia Sorensen, and Leanna Owens.
You didn't tend to anyone else?
Objection has to be answered.
Grounds.
Overruled. She may answer.
No.
No further questions?
Thank you. Any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Shiel. You may step down. May I have the exhibits, please? Thank you. Thank you.
Your
Say
Honor,
my call. I'm sorry.
Your Honor, if it pleases the court, may I have a few moments?
We can take a short break. I'll excuse the jury. We all can take about a 10-minute break. All rise for the jury, please.